Welcome everyone. Welcome to a brand new live stream today with one of the OG legends of the space, DaanCryptoTrades. Welcome, my friend. How are you doing?
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm doing great, thanks. Yeah, excited to get into this.
Yes, I'm very excited. I can't wait to hear about your views on Bitcoin because we haven't discussed them just yet. I think a lot of people want to know what's next for Bitcoin since we just took out the all-time high. I think everyone should also be able to hear and see your screen. So honestly, like since you have around 30 to 45 minutes before you have to go to your kickbox session, take it away. I would love to see what your view is on Bitcoin and what you think is next for the markets.
All right, great. Let's get into this. Gonna try to keep it as simple as possible. Obviously, starting off, like the trend is up, higher time frame. We just made all-time highs, and like we're one Truth Social post away from making things look awful or really good again. So that's always good to keep in mind. But for me, it's pretty easy. We're still roughly in this range between, let's say, 90 to 108, 110k or so. The fact that we were trading up here, we got billions of inflows in ETFs, Sailor buying, GME or GameStop buying, and we failed to push through was a bit of a reason for me to be cautious, because that's something we've seen throughout a lot of last summer as well. When we were shopping here, the ETFs were live here. Every time we saw a lot of inflows and price started stalling, that usually meant we were at some kind of local top. And the same occurred when we were trading down into lows. We saw a lot of outflows and price stopped going down. That usually meant a reversal was close as well. So that's something I was eyeing here as well. So far, it seems to be that way because throughout the 1.8, 110k range, we were sitting there for a while, but there was no price progression. Of course, now past 1 or 2 days, we were starting to come down a bit. We're back in this range, so I would say this is, for me, a reason to stay more on the cautionary side until we are able to break higher, or we go test some of these FIB levels. I think here you can see the daily 200 moving average, the purple one, starting to slowly move higher. We haven't really tested it since breaking back above properly since April. So it could be that this one comes and tests is roughly at 98k, which would be a decent level where I would be confident starting to look for longer term longs again, for example. But until we either get here or we do break back above all-time highs properly, I am just more on the cautious side and trying to keep it a bit slow, and especially on the longs, not looking to knife catch or anything just yet.
Yeah, I feel like we also saw some bullish news, right? On Tuesday, I think it was.
Exactly,
or on Monday.
yeah.
It was like so fucking classic, you know what I mean? Like it was I was also telling like a friend of mine, I was like, it is actually a very bullish news event, you know? It's long term, it's very bullish to see things like that, but the area that we are currently trading at and just getting those kind of bullish news events and then seeing price spike up, it's just so obvious that like the bigger players are using that long and buy pressure that is then coming in to get rid of some of their positions, which makes price often stall, like you said. So yeah, I kind of agree actually with this view, that we should be seeing probably a deeper pullback. I would honestly also just love a deeper pullback, because I don't know how you feel about it, but if we get a bit of a pullback from here, a lot of people I feel like are going to compare it to the 2021 cycle top.
I think so, yeah.
It would be a classic one, you know, where everyone expects it to top out in a similar way, especially retail traders, because it's very comparable price action, I feel like, especially on the daily time frame, and then to at some point use it as fuel to get that last run towards the upside.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, my view has always been that we'll see a top somewhere late in the year. Personally, I'm still sticking with this roughly 4-year cycle. I know a lot of people are saying it's over, but
hey,
I still think it makes
Jackies
sense.
is also on the live stream. Welcome, my friend.
Hey, nice.
The legend.
It's been a while.
It's been a while.
So yeah, and generally the summers, also the past 2 years, even though we're in a big uptrend, they have been very slow. We've mostly been chopping around. Sure, that can change. Like we've seen good summers as well, like 2017, for example, was crazy. But pretty much we're mostly following what the stock market is doing, and those generally cool off as well, or like liquidity is lower, volume is lower. So to see us consolidate a bit there would not be that crazy, I think. And then somewhere Q3 or so is generally a very good period, somewhere September, October. Yeah. And then you can start some kind of finance rally up. And yeah, I think people are pretty divided here.
Yeah. And how about your spot positions in this case? Are you continuing to hold them right now, and maybe hedging them with some short positions, or just holding them and that's it, and you're waiting for new long opportunities?
Yeah, I was buying here and there last month during all the tariff drama. I did shave off a good bit of that in the past 2 weeks. And yeah, the past week or so, I've mostly been focused on shorts on some of these meme coins like Modang, Beanit, etc. These things went up like 6-7x.
Yeah, I remember
and
we
it's
talked
pretty
about
clear.
it a few weeks ago.
Yeah, the squeezes are, I think they're pretty much done. All the shorts are washed out, and now you're seeing like you get these 10% up days or so, and they just instantly retrace the same day or the day after. So just using those to get some short exposure to hedge against whatever spot I have. And then whenever they full retrace, I'll just close out. Like I'm not gonna hold for a minus 90% move immediately. Although I think they'll head there over the next year or so. It will just be slowly down, I think. And I'll just use the squeezes on those to get back in and then do those kind of short trades, I guess.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I'll quickly share my view as well. It's very similar. So let me see. You should be able to see my screen. And now people in the stream should also be able to see my screen. I actually agree with your view. I feel like that liquidity that we had resting above the previous all-time high over here and also above these local highs right over here, I feel like that liquidity has been used for the bigger players to shave off at least some of their positions, which, as you said, often makes price stall. Now we had this recent push to the upside over here as well, and I feel like, especially since price broke a new all-time high as well, I feel like many people have probably been chasing this push to the upside with longs and buy positions, because they felt like, okay, we're entering price discovery and price is now going to squeeze towards 120k, maybe even higher. So along this squeeze to the upside, I feel like a lot of people have been opening up very late long positions. You know what I mean? It makes sense, especially when I also look at myself, and I just started out with trading and investing. If I would see a squeeze up like this towards new all-time highs, I would always expect price to continue to trade higher, meaning that those long and buy positions, they obviously need an invalidation for their trade. And I feel like most of those positions are using these lows to cover their stop loss, meaning that I feel like there's a lot of liquidity that has been building up beneath those lows. And I feel like that should be the next draw on liquidity, the next target from here. Now, you said you expect price to range and to maybe slow bleed a little bit throughout summer. I do feel like that could also be the case where we take out these lows then form a local bottom, and then squeeze higher during June and July already. Doesn't necessarily have to happen. If it happens though, then I expect that monthly low to form in the first 2 weeks or so of June. Because when we also look at the monthly data, and I know you are now also a little bit into data, Daan. When we look at the monthly data over here for Bitcoin, and we look at the monthly statistics over the last 5 years, give it a second to load, then we can see that almost 100% of the months form the first pivot during the first 2 weeks, as you can see over here. And then the second half of the month is forming the second pivot almost all of the time as well for Bitcoin. Meaning that if we anticipate a strong pivot to form after the monthly open, followed by a bullish month, that first pivot needs to be formed within those first 2 weeks over here. Because that's what data is basically suggesting. So if we get an early month dip, I will still be looking for potential swing longs over here. Maybe with, I don't know, my invalidation over here and then anticipating a bullish month. So that is slightly different. I do also feel like you just said, that we should expect some more local downside at least before more upside or before some more consolidation. But I feel like if we do take out this liquidity that we have been building up beneath those lows, it could be a good area also because we are feeling this imbalanced candle to look for a potential monthly low to form within those first 2 weeks. And then potentially bullish month of June and a bullish month of July throughout summer. It could be a potential scenario, but maybe that's also just a little bit more hopium, and there probably is a higher probability that instead of squeezing higher, we might see a bit of a bounce over here and then just continue to range throughout summer. And then, like you said, during Q3, then squeeze towards higher levels. But yeah, I will also continue to look for shorts actually on Bitcoin until we take out the liquidity that was resting beneath or is resting beneath those lows right there. So we actually have pretty similar views. How do you feel about that, Daan?
Yeah, also in regards to you talking about the first low or high being at the start of the month, this was something people were figuring out last summer when we were seeing those. We had 4 months in a row where we were bottoming or topping on the 5th or 6th of the month. And then from there on out, that kind of kept going for a while. So without the stats, which of course make this a lot easier, we were people were aware of this, and this is basically continued, except for December and January where we basically chopped around. But except those, we have seen a low or high in the first week pretty much, and then
same
price
also for
reversed.
April.
Yeah, price reversed the other way around and then kept going basically.
Same
So
also
that's
for April and for May. We formed a monthly low and then we expand higher during the last 3 weeks of the month. Jackie's is actually asking interesting question. He's asking, Legends, do you think this drop goes to 98k then higher or 92k then higher? So Jackie is asking whether we think that this liquidity beneath those lows might get taken out as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm just gonna play it level by level. One thing I wanted to highlight was this chart, which
wait, let me quickly show your short screen. Yeah, people can see your screen again.
All right. So obviously this is a bit on the, like, I'm not thinking we start an entire bear market from here just yet. But this was what you said earlier, that people are kind of comparing this now as we swept the all-time highs. And I do think this sentiment will really cycle through the moment we start trading at like the high 90s or so. People will start thinking it's over. Of course, who knows? I'm not ruling anything out, but I think having this in the back of people's minds could really make them turn really bearish in like the 90s area already, which could then, of course, be a decent level at some point. But we'll have to see how price reacts, how the sentiment is at the time.
Yeah, same. I kind of agree.
But anywhere in the 90s is okay for me personally. But I will say, just something I have said for myself, because this was roughly our range.
Mm-hmm.
Say 108 to 90. We broke below. There was a lot of the tariff drama. We broke back in. So this is our range. If we were to break back below here, that would be for me a reason to probably cut all long-term exposure and call it a day until we at least retake this this range. Because we've been doing the same thing roughly for the entire cycle. Just gonna draw these ranges out a bit. We break back below, we retake the range, and then it's new highs from there, and we keep going. It never happened that we retook the range and then fell back below here. So I think this is my trigger for like long-term bearishness. Until this happens, I do think we'll see like 150-ish or whatever somewhere this cycle. But I don't want to see this happen.
Yeah.
Of course, a wick or anything. Let's say we get some kind of bad news and we wick and we go back up. That's fine. But
what do you think? What do you think, Jackies? I actually have a similar view as you once again, Dan. I do think I would prefer a push towards the liquidity around 90k, because I also feel like, Dan, what you said, sentiment would then really be in our favor. And Jackie is now also saying that in the comments. There's so many good similarities with the 2021 cycle top. So I would prefer a push there, but often what you see when price is truly bullish, it doesn't offer those deep pullbacks all the time. Usually the pullbacks are more aggressive and more shallow, and then it would just take out this internal liquidity and retest the 100k area and then get an aggressive buyback and squeeze higher. I think that has a higher probability to happen, although I would prefer the deeper pullback to happen. Now, let me quickly share my screen again. Let's see. You should also be able to see my screen. My invalidation is similar as yours, Dan. But when we have the range high over here, and we have the range low, I don't know, in this area over here, then usually what you do quite often see, and we haven't really seen it that often this Bitcoin cycle, but we did see it over here, is that, let's say over here, this was our range low, and this was our range high. Usually what you see is that after that first bigger deviation, price tends to form a second smaller deviation still quite often. To kind of make people think, okay, we're breaking back below that range low again, and we should do something like this, you know? So if it pushes beneath that range low, I'm not instantly turning bearish over here expecting something like this to happen. I would only turn bearish if it really gives me a breakdown model. So in that case, I would like to see a push back into the range. And if it then breaks back below this low again, then I expect this to happen, and then I will also exit my long-term exposure over here and flip swing short, and then I will target this, and then probably from there on we enter a longer period of consolidation, which you can then call a bear market in between this range, for example, you know, for a year maybe. That would be the bearish scenario for me. But until then, even if we push into this range low, at first obviously we expect it to hold, but even if it gives us a bit of a deviation below, I wouldn't mind that at all. And then I think this can just turn into a second smaller deviation, just like we have seen something very similar right over here, where that first bigger deviation was being followed up by a second smaller deviation. It's just what you see with ranges all the time, you know, very often at least.
Yeah, so I agree. You do really want to see some proper continuation below to really confirm that breakdown.
Exactly.
The one big difference, of course, is this time we did take out the highs from the range it got back into. In the summer, that wasn't quite the case. So we basically came to the middle and then fell back below.
Yeah, true.
So that's something like it's in this case more bearish that we did take out the highs. Like it would be more bullish if we didn't take out the highs.
Yeah, if you would front run, like take this out and then front run the all-time high. I agree. That would have been.
But still, like we were talking about all the good news, all the inflows that came in, and price didn't progress. That's true, and it's generally a reason to be cautious in the short term. But I also think for every billion that Sailor buys up here, it's a billion less supply, or supply that's chewed through. And that's why usually maybe it comes off a bit here, but then the next time you get here, a lot of this supply at this level, like the sellers that wanted to sell at 110 or whatever, yes, there will always be sellers, but there's a lot less than there were like a week ago. So that's why usually if you get the second attempt or whatever in such a bull trend, you do push through. So it's not all that bad, but yeah, it might just needs a slowdown in short term, like we're seeing now already.
I have a question. What do you feel like? How do you feel about Saylor buying so much Bitcoin? And do you feel like throughout the next bear market he will get wrecked, or do you feel like he's just gonna continue to own that much of the supply of Bitcoin?
Well,
it's an interesting topic to discuss because he's just keeps on buying like crazy. And at first I was like, okay, he's way too smart to get liquidated. But now I'm at the point where I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's just reckless buying at this point, you know?
Yeah, well, I'll start off with the fact that I don't know the exact details of all the financials and the structure. I do know it's not nearly as bad as most people think it is. I do know all the people that did research it properly and went into it all claim like, okay, it's not as bad as people initially think. I think his leverage actually went down throughout the last year or so. So even though its average buying price is up from like 20k to what is it now, 70 or something. His actual Bitcoin per MicroStrategy share, which is why MicroStrategy is outperforming and still trades at a higher premium, is actually going up. So he's and that's not just because Bitcoin is going up. Of course, that helps. Like if Bitcoin goes minus 50%, MicroStrategy will do roughly the same. But most of his debt doesn't mature until like 2027, 28, and even then it's in these tranches. So I think something which basically never really happened before has to happen to Bitcoin. And even with its current size, it will have to trade at like 10 or 20k or so in like 5 years time and doesn't bounce along the way. Then he might get into trouble and he will have to start selling some of it. But until then, like his leverage is actually really low from what I'm reading. So I don't think it can get an issue somewhere because we know Bitcoin can, like, let's say we get a COVID repeat, we go down 50% in a day or whatever. I don't know. It can get worse, but I don't know. I think you'll have plenty of time before we even get remotely close to the area where he'll get in danger.
Yeah, he's not an idiot as well, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and you won't get there overnight. It will be you need to be in some mega bear market, and then years from now, like in the next 2 years or whatever, he can't really get liquidated, even if it goes to 0, let's say. So
true.
Yeah,
I feel you. And what about Ethereum? How do you feel about Ethereum for the coming months? I would love to see your view on Ethereum as well.
Yeah. Hold up.
I'll open up my chart in the background as well. We have two legends in the chat. Sergio Tesla and Jackie's both are present.
Let's go. Okay, for ETH, for me it's pretty simple in terms of the chart. I've marked these levels out for like, I don't know how long, but it's very convenient because it keeps respecting these levels pretty well, which is mainly the 2.1k region and now the 2.8k region, which we're pretty close at. You can see throughout the cycle, we've mostly just bounced off of these, and whenever we break through, we get some kind of violent move, and even the bounces are pretty nice. Of course, this move was pretty violent. I think it was mostly shorts getting squeezed, which is also a reason why I have been a bit cautious. I've been holding ETH throughout all this time, probably a mistake, but I have shaved some of my spot profits throughout. Or well, they are profits because they were bought back in the day, but I bought or sold some of my spots in the last few weeks. Not because I think ETH is pretty bearish or I don't believe in it anymore, but this move up, I think there's still little spot inflows for ETH, so there's little spot demand. It was mostly shorts getting squeezed because you can imagine this thing has been underperforming for years. So every pair trade out there, basically, whether it's long sol, short ETH, long hype, short ETH, a lot of those things unwound here in 2 days, which is why you saw this violent reaction. basically the entire market was short ETH against other stuff, or just plain up short ETH. So yes, it was a nice move. And throughout this time, you also saw some of those meme coins that were down 95%. They went up multiples, but it was mainly all shorts getting squeezed. So that's why I also mentioned after this move, okay, yeah, the next week or next few weeks will be where it really counts, because then you'll see if there's actual demand for these things, and it's not just a short squeeze into slow bleed. And I mean, sure, we can't expect ETH to keep going immediately, but you can already see ETH BTC, it's kind of stalling. There's not real progression. To be fair, I think it looks pretty decent here. But in terms of the US dollar chart, this 2.8k level would be pretty key. I don't think you'll get here without BTC also pushing through all-time high again.
Yeah.
Until then, I will just think we're range bound. Let's say we get a retest of 2.1k. I think it would be perfectly fine, would be clean. Maybe too clean. If it happens, I'd rather have it be like a fast wick and back up, because
or once again a deviation below, you know.
That could be fine as well, like so. But if you really start trading into this slowly, and then you just sit there, and once you see this happen, you can start expecting this kind of move, and then it's over, I think.
I agree.
But anything around this region would really be nice. Would fill some of this big move up. Don't think you'll instantly BART move it back down unless you get some kind of really black swan event or whatever. But yeah, for here, the place where we're trading at, I'm quite neutral, I'd say.
I like the fact that we are slow grinding up a little bit after that strong move to the upside, instead of slow grinding down. That would have been so sketchy.
Because these kind of moves generally end up in
or they end up in a squeeze down first, but then you have a lot of liquidity that you have been building up that then can be used by smart money to open up new buy positions, you know. And that is what I really like. I'll quickly share my view as well, but it's once again very similar. Great minds often think alike, but it's just, I feel like this chart is extremely bullish. Like in my mind at this point, there's very little reason chart wise, and I always try to just trust the chart, to be bearish on ETH. Just seeing this perfect retest of that 2018 high while sweeping, and this is also what I discussed actually with Jackies a few weeks ago. Actually, when this was happening, we were live streaming together. It was sweeping all of this liquidity while tapping into that previous all-time high. Then swing filled it over here. Then we have this bigger, what to me looks like an accumulation range over here. Then it confirmed that deviation first, reclaimed it. Then on the daily, you have this, what also to me looks like an accumulation range over here, which is also the levels that you marked out, I believe. So over here, and then you have your range high right over here. And I feel like we have been closing several weekly candles now back inside of that that lower time frame range, and also the higher time frame range over here. Accumulation range for TradFi, then multi-year bull market for ETH. It would be crazy, Jackies, if this bigger range that I marked out turns out indeed to be an accumulation range, and this at some point, I don't know when or where, it starts breaking out above that range high, then I think your minimum target has to be like $8,000 at least. I think that is a very conservative target in that case, and I honestly mean that, just from a chart perspective, you know what I mean? But yeah, obviously we also have to do with fundamentals and that kind of stuff. But I think this is very bullish. Also the next monthly candle, this is so clean. Like this monthly chart, to me, it's so clean. If it can also close above this March high over here, so tonight with the monthly candle close, or tomorrow I believe, I feel like there's very little reason to be bearish on ETH. And as you said, if it gets a dip into that range low area, this gray area, it would be a gift. Especially since, like we also discussed, it's slow grinding up instead of slow grinding down after the squeeze up. So usually what you see, if you get very impulsive moves and afterwards price starts slow grinding down like this, it usually ends up in a flush taking out the low of that pump. But right now what price is doing is rather bearish in my rather bullish actually, in my opinion. So we have that squeeze up, and the price consolidates a little bit, but then it starts slow grinding up like this. And then either, like Dan said, it results in another squeeze, which is very possible, or it results in a squeeze down first, but then this squeeze down often turns out to be a bullish retest. Because of this slow grind up, you are building up a lot of liquidity beneath all of those lows. You sweep that liquidity, then price trades back above that high, and then it squeezes higher very aggressively. So in my opinion, very bullish on ETH. I actually have set some new swing long orders. I was swing long first from this level over here. I closed it out actually, I think over here. I can't really remember. I closed it out, but now I'm waiting for a sweep of that that internal liquidity that we have now been building up by the slow grind. So we have some liquidity over here, but mainly we have quite some liquidity, I feel like, over here. If we do start off June, and then I once again go back to the statistics, to the monthly statistics for ETH, super interesting. Let's see. Shout out to the legend himself who built this dashboard, who's actually in the live stream chat right now, Sergio Tesla. What we can see, give it a second to, I think it's, yeah, it's loaded. We can see that, to be exact, 94% of months over the last 5 years have formed its first pivot of the month during the first 15 days. The last time that ETH didn't form the first pivot during the first 6 days is 5 months ago. Now, if we exclude this one, so that was a pretty rare event because we can see a 2% probability. If we exclude this one, the monthly candle 5 months ago, then we can see that the last time that ETH didn't form its first pivot for the month during the first 6 days is 13 months ago. So that's over a year ago. Meaning that, let's say we anticipate next month to be a bullish month. Then the P1, the first pivot of the month, needs to be a low. So that means that we can then expect that low likely to be formed during the first 6 days over here. Which in my opinion is super interesting data and information. Because that means that I'm only interested to play a sweep of either one of these levels and open up a new swing long if it happens during the first 6 days next month. Let's say next month we do something like this, first 6 days, then I'm not interested to play this sweep anymore. Because if this then happens, then I'm expecting bearish continuation for the rest of the month. You see what I mean, Dan? Because then we form the first pivot still during the first 6 days, but then the first pivot is a high. Meaning that it's likely to see more bearish continuation, actually bullish continuation. So I've actually set up some swing long orders on ETH, hoping for a flush early during the month of June, form a strong monthly low, and then continue higher during the rest of the month. So that is once again also one of the ways to use those statistics. It's just, the last time, if we exclude this month, we didn't form the first pivot of the month during the first 6 days is over a year ago. That's crazy to me, at least. That's crazy.
Yeah, if you can pull up my chart for a second.
Yes,
I had this written down for a while on my BTC chart. This just took a screenshot real quick.
Oh yeah.
You can see it visually pretty easy here, with the low or the high of the month with the little arrow and the date.
Yeah.
So we had like this streak of 5/5 of the month back in the summer, and then, but besides, I think December, January, and then the 10th of October in 2024, it's basically always been the first week, and whether it was a pump or a flush, most of it was a flush. We proceeded to trend into the other direction for the rest of the month afterwards.
It's crazy, right?
Which usually it was like at least like a 20% move or so on BTC alone. So if you can indeed wait for the first week, and of course if you're bullish, you'd rather have this thing go down at the start of the month, seeing this trend that has been going on. And also a lot of this has to do with the fact that, okay, you find some kind of local top or bottom early in the month, and it starts reversing, and then people go look at those weekly or the monthly candle, and then they say, okay, well, if it keeps going here, it's going to look really good, or really bad for that matter. Like, let's say you early in next month, you sweep the all-time high again and you start reversing. and then people will start looking at that scandal and they're like, oh,
Yep.
this isn't gonna look well. But the other thing, or the other side is true as well. Like, let's say you get a deep dump, like somewhere in the 90s or whatever, and then you start putting in the wick, and people are like, well, we're still in a big uptrend. This thing is probably going back to all-time high, and that's kind of how it becomes more of a self-fulfilling prophecy as well, I think.
Yeah, Jackie's is saying interesting statistics. So a local low for Bitcoin in the first 10 days of June. Well, I actually think instead of the first 10 days, when we go back to the Bitcoin,
maybe even the first week, most of the time.
I'll quickly share my screen. Looking at the Bitcoin statistics, we can see that, okay, so around 98% of months formed during the first 15 days, but then even 43, 44, 54% of months over the last 5 years for Bitcoin formed during the first 6 days. So definitely, I would say that probably even more so, like Daan also said, it could very well be the first week rather than the first 2 weeks or the first 10 days. The first 9 days, it would be 65%. Yeah, 65% of months formed during the first 9 days. So it's a super interesting metric, you know. All that you basically in that case have to do, okay, the month is starting, figure out your bias for that month, you know. And let's say your bias is bearish, then you try to time the top during the first week on ETH or Bitcoin or any other altcoin. If your bias is bullish, then you try to time the bottom in the first 1 or 2 weeks, you know. And then the second half of the month, you just always try to play continuation trades, anticipating new monthly second pivots to be formed, you know. Because when you look at the data, then you can see that for Bitcoin over the last 5 years, 8, 19, that's 38, that's 38, 46, 48, 79% of months over the last 5 years for Bitcoin form the second pivot of the month during the last 12 days. Meaning that, yeah, you always should target the second pivot to be formed during the end of the month, statistically speaking. And the low or the high for the month to be formed during the first week or 10 days or sometimes 2 weeks. It obviously is different for every asset. For ETH, I think the monthly statistics even provide a cleaner edge than for Bitcoin, because for ETH, like we just said, almost all of the time it forms it during the first 6 days. It's crazy. It's a really big difference, as you can see. So yeah, I'm definitely, especially for ETH, I would like that monthly low to be formed in an aggressive way during the first 6 days. And then, and let's say it happens during the first 6 days, and then you get a clean reversal structure based on structure as well. Then it's just so easy to also, you know, add some more margin to your position, and then you have such a strong invalidation below that monthly low in that case, and then you can just let it run until at least the last 12 days of the month. You know,
you gotta go good 2.5 weeks at least of trending environment, probably. Because, well, of course, doesn't have to happen that way, but like you said, you got a good invalidation and the stats support it.
Exactly.
And it has been this way for like 1.5 years or so.
Exactly. Yeah, for 13 months already. So you have such a nice edge in that case. And you can just have a lot of confidence in your bullish invalidation over here, and then just continue to target new monthly highs until like the last 12 days of the month, and that's where you start shaving a lot of profit. And
it's generally the sentiment is also always been following that dump initially. They're like, okay, it's over.
Exactly.
For example. And then it starts reversing and trending, and by the time people are like, oh, maybe it's bullish, because most of the months have obviously been up the past year.
Yeah.
At that point, later in the month, they're like, okay, let's go, and then they'll start leveraging up on alts or whatever, and then you get this kind of flush like we're seeing now this last week. A lot of alts are already down like 20-ish% from their highs.
Yeah.
And then they'll carry this bearishness into next month. You'll get the further dump, then they'll think it's over, and then this has just been repeating a lot. Of course, it's not always this easy when you're right in the middle of it, but it's generally the theme we've been seeing.
Let me just put it like this. Let's say you get a very aggressive dump early of June on ETH. I think it's buy the dip season, you know. Especially if you get an aggressive dump over here, sentiment will turn very bearish again, like you said, and it's like the perfect way to bottom out and then squeeze higher. So
and let's say, okay, for example, it's really easy. Like last month, there was no downside wick on the month. So you guys are saying, okay, it's likely we'll take this out based on the
Bitcoin.
statistics.
Yeah, I'll quickly share
Yeah.
your screen again.
But let's say we go up. We do put it some kind of wick the first day or so. We go up offer for like the first week. You'd say, okay, then the high there is probably might be our local or P1 or whatever.
Yeah.
For the rest of the month, and we might trend down. But how would you play? Let's say we trend up for the first 2 weeks, for example. Are you then still treating it as a potential high of the month?
I would always let structure decide for me, you know. Let's say we continue to trade up on Bitcoin for the first, I don't know, 12, 14 days. And
which
then,
is longer than usual.
Yeah, exactly. And
then,
if structure is then very bearish or turning very bearish, I could still potentially treat that as a potential P1 for the month and expect some bearish reversals, you know. But if then Bitcoin trends up for the first 2 weeks and then on day 15 or 16 make another new high, yeah, then timing wise it would be very unlikely to go and take out the monthly low, you know.
Yeah.
And if distance then also showcases a good probability to see a bigger move or that there's a lot of gas left in the tank, then I think it would be stupid to start looking for shorts, constantly trying to time the exact Pico top. You know what I mean? Then I would rather wait for a pullback and then try to time the higher low and then play longs towards new monthly highs and monthly P2s. Good question.
Yeah, I think December and January, the most recent ones, are decent examples of this.
Yeah.
They're very choppy. There's not that much price progression in the end on both sides. So in December, we basically trended up until the 17th. Then we did come down, but we mostly ended the month flat. And then January was roughly the same. Well, it started off nicely if you were looking for shorts, I guess. We topped out on the 7th. Then we made new lows. But then on the 13th, we bounced again pretty violently. Of course, this was into the inauguration. Sorry. And I think a lot of that was playing into it as well. But I guess these were the only 2 months that were a bit of an exception. So I think as long as you manage your risk there, you should still be perfectly fine.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's all trading in general is just all a game of probabilities. You know, you never have a 100% probability. The only thing that we can always control is our risk management, and then trust the probabilities to play out over a longer period of time in our favor. So that is what we are doing as traders every single day. Anyways, I think we had a lovely stream. I think you have to go to your kickbox session soon as well.
Yes.
So let's hope the weather will turn brighter later today in Amsterdam. It's not looking too shiny right now. I want to thank you for tuning in, Daan. I really had a lot of fun. I hope you did as well. And it's always nice to see that our views are aligning, and also with the same view like Jackie, and also Sergio Tesla has a similar view. So I think the probabilities are definitely in our favor for the coming months. That our scenarios hopefully will play out on Bitcoin and also on ETH. Sergio Tesla saying, come to the sun in Lisboa. I'm flying to Lisbon actually on Sunday. So I'll catch you there next week, Marnik, you know that. I can't wait, honestly, because next week I believe it's still going to be shitty weather over here in Amsterdam. So I'm going to take off next week and go to Lisbon. But thank you, Daan. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you as well.
Perfect. And then let's do this more often if you are down for it. I'm definitely down. Have a great day, gents. Thanks for the quick session. Thank you for tuning in, Sergio and Jackie's. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. And I'll catch you guys soon.
All right, thanks.